Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganata Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganata Prapta Sakalyana Gunana Vasya Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunana Vasya Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Charana Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Gita Vaditra Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Niramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Vande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charana Chaturvidhashi Bhagavad Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Kridaiva Trupti Vajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Para Madhura Lila Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Bande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Dhanalalupasya Bande Gurashi Nekunja Yuno Ratikelisidhyai Jayali Bhiri Juktit Apekshaniya Nekundayuno Atikelisida Yalivir Yukti Tatrati Daksha Ativalavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Pativarapasya Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatha bhav Gataiva sadabhi Kintu prabharja priya eva tasya Vande Gora Shri Charanaravrindam Priya eva tasya Vande Gora Shri Yasya prasada Bhagavad prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Bhagavad prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Dhyayam stubham tasya Yasatri sandhyam Vande Gura Shri Charanaravrindam Dhyayam stubham tasya Yasatri sandhyam Vande Gura Shri Dhyayam stubham tasya Yasatri sandhyam Vande Gura Shri Charanaravrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Satarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Yaraya Namah Krishna, Jadavaya Namah. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudam. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad-Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav Radhe. Jaya Jagana, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Baladeva Subhadrama. Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Sitaram. Nittai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nittai Gaur Haribo, Haribo, Nittai Gaura Pramanande. Haribo. Jayam Vishwapar Paramahansa Prabhajagacharya. Astuttara Saraswati Srimad Iskon Pratishtha Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prima Bhaktidatta Patita Pavana. Abhachar Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Jai Ananta Kuti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Si Kaho Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Si Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Prema Nama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Si Sachinandana Shiman Gauranga Si Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatari Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhana Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kun Samakun गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय, श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय, दिलो शिव श्री राधा नील माधव की जय, श्री शिमाय पूर्णवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय, परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय, श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमती सुभद्र देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय, भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय, जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्री मथुरा रानी की जय, समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय, निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि 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 बोल. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Do you want to chant?
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladaladaine. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Silatanka nakalaye. Ito Narsimha parato Narsimha. Yeto yeto yami tato Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha. Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapadye. Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabhrangam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tava Kara Kamala. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Nrsimhadev Jaya Nrsimhadev Jaya Nrsimhadev Jaya Nrsimhadev Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Ke Savasatya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Ke Savasatya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Listen, Tulsi. Can you know? Can you sing, Tulsi?
Tomara sharanalo Dara vancha purna ho
तुम्हारा शरण लाओ तारा बंचा पुना
कृपा करी करो तारे वृंदावन वासी
तुम्हें कृपा वृंदावन वासी
मोरा यही अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोरा ये विलास विलास कुंज दियो वास
नयने हेरी सदा जुगल रूप राशि यही निवेदन धरो सखीर अनुगत करो
निवेदन धर सखीर अनुगत करो
सेवादि कर दिए करो निज दासी
सेवायादि कर दिए करो निज दासी
यही
दीना कृष्ण
दासे को ये न मोरा होय
दीना कृष्ण दास को न मोरा
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये न भासी
यानी कानी च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
निताय गौरा हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल
निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल जय श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः Vrindai tulasi debai priyayai ke sava satya Vishnu bhakti prade devi shatavataye namah. Vrindaye tulasi devyai priyayai ke sava satya Vibhakti satavataye namah. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi ki Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shishi Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you, his wish is fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, making resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I would always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavitams of Raj. Please give me the privilege to go some service and make me your own man servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing with love Shri Radha and Govinda, Shri Madi, Maharaj, Vrinda Devi ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikh Hastakam ki Jai. Chito Dapana Mahajanam Baba Mangala Aarti Varapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitarnam Vidya Badru Jeevanam Ananda Buddhivatunam Pratiparam Purnamrita Sharanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparam Vidayaki Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Etadrishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Midrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Darorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam va jagadisha kamaye Mama janmane janmanishari Bhavatar bhakti rahaitu ki tvai Oyi nandatanu kinkaram Patitam mam vishame bhavam buddho Kripaya tava par pankaja Sita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galara shrudharaya Vadanam Gadagadharudaya Gira Pulakai Nishitava Pukadam Tavanama Grahane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakyusha Prabhursaitam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahename Aslishava Padaratam Pinashtamam Adarshnar Marmahatam Karotuva Chatata thava vidadhatulam pato matpranatastu saivanapara Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kirstakam ki Jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurateshe Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutari Ishmari. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon, It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or rather I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering one moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it should remain so, even if his hand is me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Chaitanya. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme, the devotee to dedicate life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spirited master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as spiritual activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Says Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripasindubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Puraya Krishna Vestaya Putri Srimati Bhaktivinoda Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvaya Charni Visesa Sunyava Paskatistai. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradan Sahaguna Lalita Shri Bhajaka Vitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namini Shiva Savanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Abhisidanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padamba Jayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Nuragaya Sachinandunamine Guru Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Vrayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Tuse Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayata Suratura Pangur Mama Manda Matir Gati Matsarva Swapadambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Vihi Sevyamanos Marami Shiman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopinatak Sriyestranam Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustutra Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satmatsakalpa Riksha Laksha Vitesha Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamana Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Konantam Aravinda Dalayataksha Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gedam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamanti Bangalalita Nita Prakasam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vikrahasya Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaita Machuta Manadi Mananta Rupa Madhyam Purana Purusham Navyovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yovayo Ratapi Manaso Manipam Gamanam Sopyastiyat Prapadasim Yavichintya Tatve Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim Yes Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chayaya Danta Antantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasthataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suttarya Meva Nikama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasapati Bhavita Bhista Birya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochana Ina Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Navatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramampu Mamyo Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesa Vasadadi Vibhuti Bhuyanam Tad Brahmanis Kalamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham bhajami ananda chinmaya rasat mataya manasuya praninam pratifalam smaratam upetya lilaya tena bhuvanani jaya yajasram govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami goloka namni nichadamni talechatasya devi mahesu haridama satesu tesu te te prabhavani jaya vichastayena govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami shrististati pralaya sadhava saktireka jayeva yasya bhuvanani vivarti durga chana rupam vyasya chestatesa govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami ksiram yata dadevikara visesa yoga sanjayate naitata pritakasti hetu yasambhutam apitata samapaitikar govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami dipartsadeva hita santanam abhyapetya dipayate vivita hetu samanu dharma yastadvikeva hitya vishnutaya vivati govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yakarna narlava jale bhajati sma yoga nidramananta jagaranda saroma kuba adhara saktim avalambya param swamurtim govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yasyaika nisvasita kalamatavalamya jivanti loma vilaja jagaranda nata vishnu mahansa yasya kalavi seso govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami vaspanya tasma sakalesu nijesu teja sriyam kiya prakatya tapitadvadatra brahmaya esa jagadanda vidana karta govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yat pada palava yugam vinidaya kumbha dvande pranamasama esa ganadi raja vignan vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami agnir mahiga ganamambu maruti sasya kalasta takvamana siddhi jagatrayani yasmad bhavanti vibhavanti visanti yamcha govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yas chaksuresa savita sakalagrahanam raja samasta suramurti rasesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami dharmota papa nichaya sutayastapamsi brahma dikita patagavata yasta jiva yadata matra vibhava prakata prabhava govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yastrinda gopa matavendra mahosva karma bandhana rupa falabhajana matanoti karmani nirdhati kintu chabakti bhajam govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami yam krodha kama sahajab pranayadi bitti vatsalya moha guru gaurava sevi bhavai sanchintya tasya sadvisim tanamapurete govinda madi purisham tamaham bhajami shriyakanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo drumabhumischintamani ganama itoyam amritam kataganam natyam gamanam apivam sipriyasaki chidanandam jyoti param apitadasvadyam apichasa yatra shiradi bhivishravati shirabi vyashta sumahan nime sardakyo vavajati nahi yatra visamaye bhaje svitadvipam tamaham ihu golakam itiyam vidantaste santakshati virachara katipaye. Guru Pranam appears Kisye. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I, from my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet, is such spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Over my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. A spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I, for my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 31. Vipanam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vipanam Vishpanena Nigriya Bhujagadipam Uttapyapayayad Gavas Tatoyam Prakritistitam. Vipanan, perplexed in great difficulties. Vishapanena, by drinking poison. Nigriya, subduing. Bhujaga, Adipam, the chief of the reptiles. Uthatpya, after coming out. Apayayat, caused to drink. Gava, the cows. Tat, that. Toyam, water. Prakriti, natural. Stitam, situated. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The inhabitants of Vrindavana were perplexed by great difficulties because a certain portion of the Yamuna was poisoned by the chief of the reptiles, Kaliya. The Lord chastised the snake king within the water and drove him away. And after coming out of the river, he caused the cows to drink the water and proved that the water was again in its natural state. Text 32. Ayajayad Gosavena Goparajam Dvijotamai Vitasya Chorubaryasya Chikirsan Sadvyayam Vibhu. Ayat Jayat, made to perform. Gosavena, by the worship of the cows. Goparajam, the king of the cowherds. Dviju Uttamai, by the learned brahmanas. Vitasya, of the wealth. Cha, also. Urubarasya, great opulence. Chikir son, desiring to act. Satvyayam, proper utilization. Vibhu, the great. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord Krishna desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaja Nanda for worship of the cows, and also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, meaning cow, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Since he, meaning Krishna, is the teacher of everyone, the Lord also taught his father, Nanda Maharaja, was a well-to-do landholder and owner of many cows, and, as was the custom, he used to perform yearly worship of Indra, the king of heaven, with great opulence. This worship of demigods by the general populace is also advised in the Vedic literature, just so people can accept the superior power of the Lord. The demigods, or servants of the Lord, deputed to look after the management of various activities of universal affairs. Therefore, it is advised in the Vedic scriptures that one should perform yagyas to appease the demigods. But one who is devoted to the Supreme Lord has no need to appease the demigods. Worship of the demigods by common people is an arrangement for acknowledging the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, but it is not necessary. Such appeasement is generally recommended for material gains only. As we have already discussed in the second canto of this literature, one who admits the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not need to worship the secondary demigods. Sometimes, being worshipped and adored by less intelligent living beings, the demigods become puffed up with power and forget the supremacy of the Lord. This happened when Lord Krishna was present in the universe, and thus the Lord wanted to give a lesson to the king of heaven, Indra. He therefore asked Maharaj Nanda to stop the sacrifice offered to Indra and to use the money properly by performing a ceremony worshipping the cows and the pasturing ground on the hill of Govardhana. By this act, Lord Krishna taught human society, as he has instructed in the Bhagavad-Gita also, that one should worship the Supreme Lord by all acts and by all their results. That will bring about the desired success. The Vaishyas are specifically advised to give protection to the cows and their pasturing ground or agricultural land instead of squandering their hard-earned money. That will satisfy the Lord. The perfection of one's occupational duty, whether in the sphere of duty to oneself, one's community, or one's nation, is judged by the degree to which the Lord is satisfied. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Lord Krishna desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaja Nanda for worship of the cows, and also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So you might ask the question, how is worshiping the cows and the pasturing land worshiping Krishna? So that's an important question to ask. And the answer is that whenever something is related to Krishna, it's non-different than Krishna also. So the cows, especially Surabi cows and the Kamadhenu cows of the spiritual world, are Krishna's playmates. When he was 5, 6 years old, he was given the responsibility of taking the calves, which are cows and female cows, but young ones, out to pasture every day. And he would go with the cowherd boys and take all these cows. His father had 900,000 cows. Imagine that. 900,000 cows. And that's why he was very wealthy, because wealth was counted by, or considered according to how many cows and how much grains you have in stock. So Nanda Maharaj was an extremely wealthy person. Simply by cow protection and land stewardship. And that is what a Vaishya should do. Krishi Goraksha Vanyajam, Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. So that's why someone asked me the other day, if everyone becomes Krishna conscious and they give up IT and AI and all these different material, let's say, ways or education to make a lot of money or to make money, what should they do? Well, what should they do? They should do what Nanda Maharaj did, to protect the cows and to be good stewards of the land. And you will have real wealth, not this phony wealth in how much papers you have, dollars or rupees or whatever. It's all paper money. And it fluctuates. Look what just happened to the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin went up to be, there's so many different Bitcoins now, and they were going up and up and up, and then they had a steep decline. And overnight, people were wiped out. So, and even dollars, like in Germany in World War II, or World War I, after the when they lost the war, they had to put thousands of Deutschmarks in a barrel or in a push cart or some kind of something and take it to buy a loaf of bread. The inflation went out of control completely. And this has happened to other countries also, like Cyprus and other countries have gone bankrupt because of the devaluation of their money, because they printed too much money, or they borrowed too much money, or they lost a war. And inflation is happening now in the United States. It's very dangerous and even the head of the financial dealings of the government, her name is Yellen. She has also declared that the value of the dollar is going down, and there's massive inflation that she doesn't know how to control. So one day you wake up and your dollar will only buy, let's say, 50% of what it used to buy. That's because of inflation. That's because the crazy man who's president is printing too much money, and there's nothing to back it up except your faith in it. And when you lose your faith in the dollar, because the dollar used to be on the gold system, that already is cheating. Why? Because eventually you print more money than is backed up by gold. So it's a type of cheating. Then President Nixon, he eliminated the gold standard, and now your money is only based on your faith in it. As long as people have faith in the American dollar and the American army, they use their dollars and it buys something. But as soon as people lose their faith in the dollar, just like now, there's so many advertisements, get out of the dollar and buy gold, because the gold will it's going to increase in value because people are trying to protect their investments with backing it up with gold instead of dollars. So you see, we're living in the world of cheaters and cheated, and most of us are the cheated, and a few are the cheaters who understand how things are happening. But before, wealth was determined by how many cows you had and how much grain you had stored. So we don't understand what it means to be really wealthy. We have this false standard of how many dollars you have or how many bitcoins you have, but or how many stocks you have. All those things fluctuate, and they can collapse also. However, what doesn't collapse is cows and land stewardship, especially land stewardship. When you produce grains, and vegetables and fruits are simply corollary. They're not absolutely essential, but grains are absolutely essential, and milk is absolutely essential. Simply with milk and grains, you can sustain all of society, at least for their food needs. And by protecting the cows, they give you ideal fertilizer, cow dung and cow urine. They give you ideal milk, and with that milk you can make hundreds, maybe even thousands of different preparations. It'll keep you healthy. Okay, so here we see that Krishna wanted to properly utilize the great financial, let's say, position of Nanda Maharaj by using the money to worship the cows and the pasture land. So whenever you have cows, you need pasture land. Just like we bought a 50-acre farm in Arlington. Why did we buy it? Because it produces hay. We spend about $25,000 to $30,000 a year feeding our cows and buying hay. From this year on, we most probably will not have to buy any hay at all. We'll just use our own hay that's being grown on our 50 acres. And that's a tremendous saving of money, because when you have a lot of cows, you need a lot of hay to feed them, especially in the wintertime. Now the price of hay has gone through the wall, through the ceiling. It used to be like $15 a bale. Now it's going up to $40 a bale. And people are getting worried how they're going to feed their horses, how they're going to feed their cows. Fortunately, Krishna has made the arrangement for us. We will harvest our own hay. We won't buy it from anybody. So, you see, there is a real need to understand why cow protection and land stewardship is so important. The whole society is, not the whole society, but most people are completely dependent on industrial agriculture and industrial food production. But that is a dangerous thing also. Like, for example, in the 1930s, there were these tremendous dust storms. Why? Because the topsoil and throughout the entire Midwest was depleted because of using fertilizers and pesticides and things like that. And therefore, it almost became like a desert. And there was these tremendous storms. You can look it up on the internet. You'll see there were tremendous storms where the dust not only was in the Midwest, but it actually went to Washington, D.C., Boston, on the East Coast, and parts of the West Coast. It was a very dangerous situation, and the whole food industry, or the food production industry, became marginalized. And it was a great tragedy. The same thing is happening today because of industrial agriculture and use of pesticides and artificial fertilizers. You can look it up on the internet. You'll see in the 1930s, there was almost a complete collapse of the food industry in the United States. Okay, so land stewardship, cow protection, most people disdain it. Most people are trying to get away from it, selling their farms and selling the land. And who's buying the land that they sell really cheap just to get out of dairy and the food production? People like the owner of Microsoft, Mr. Gates. He is one of the biggest landowners in the United States because farmland is relatively cheap. And the more farmland you have, the more water you'll have, because he's a smart guy. He buys land that has water rights, and the more production you'll have. You'll have almost he could have almost a monopoly of food production if he wanted to, which he probably will, because food will be very scarce. Prabhupada has predicted that at one point in Kali Yuga there will not be any grains, there will not be any fruits and vegetables. People will just be eating meat and eating each other. They'll be reduced down to cannibalism also, eating their own children. So don't think that these are far-fetched ideas. Prabhupada has clearly said, he also has predicted that at one point they'll run out of petroleum. Because this happened previously. In the time of Hiranyaksha, there was such exploitation of the earth, pulling out different things from the earth, that the balance of the earth was compromised, and the earth fell down into the Garbhodak Ocean. And then the Lord had to appear as Varaha and put the earth back into orbit. Because there's a certain, like right now, what do? When they pull this tremendous amount of oil out of the ground to use to run cars, they replace it with water. Now water is heavier than the oil. You might not think it is, but it is. And it will skew the balance of the earth, and it could make the earth move on its axis, or it could make the earth fall down into the Garbhodak Ocean. It already happened once in history. It could happen again. So we see that there are a lot of dangerous habits of modern society that is very disconcerting, and many people are worried about it. Okay, so, but if we go back to the way of life that Krishna demonstrated when he was present 5,000 years ago, most, or if not all, of these problems would go away. But we need faith, and that's what's lacking. It's lacking because we are all illusioned by modern education, and because of that, we remain in a position of dependency, not on Krishna, but dependency on industrial agriculture, dependency on phony economics, and so forth. And because of that, we become disillusioned at one point, because there can be downturns, there can be massive, just like in the 1930s, there was massive number of people out of work. They couldn't get a job. People were selling apples on the street for 5 cents an apple, just to get enough money to eat, right? And many people lost their farms, and they became homeless. This was in America, and at that time there was a possibility that America was going to turn into a communist country because too many people got wiped out by the economic downturn. What happened? What saved America was World War II, because then they forced many people to join, many men to join the army, and many women to work in factories to replace all the men that went into the army, and the government took complete control of the economy. The government took over everything and was running the country according to communism, right? And it was, and unfortunately, the United States won the war, and everything they destroyed, they rebuilt, and they made a huge amount of money by rebuilding everything that they destroyed in Europe and in the Far East. And that's what made America rich and prosperous again. So whenever there is a big economic downturn, there's a big chance of having a major war, because that's the way people can, take over the economy, take over the banking system, take over everything. The government can take over everything, and people go along with it because there's a war. So if you read history, you will understand that many times demons have become presidents and rulers of a country, and like Hitler was definitely a Rakshasa, and he caused the death of approximately 60 million people, and he didn't care. And what does he do? He commits suicide, right? Or at least they claim he committed suicide. Other people claim that he took a submarine to Argentina and lived his life there and died there. So who knows what actually happened. But you see, these Rakshasa type of people, when they take over a government, they cause the deaths of many, many people. And in the 20th century, you had 2 major wars in which millions and millions of people died. Okay, so coming back to the way of life, like Nanda Maharaj and Krishna, is important because it's the only sustainable model. It's the model of self-sufficiency. It's the model of reliance on God rather than reliance on industries. And Prabhupada said 200 years ago there were no industries in India, and the people were happy, and they were prosperous. And if you look at history, the Europeans were all trying to go to India because India was a rich country. And the Muslims, they invaded India because India was a rich country, right? Then after British rule and Muslim rule for 1,000 years, people in India became poor. And people would always talk about starving Indians, right? So we see how exploitation of India almost ruined it completely. And then India became convinced, the rulers of India, like Nehru and others, became convinced that they had to industrialize the country completely in order to compete with the West. That's a big mistake. But unfortunately, people go along with that today, and it just creates havoc, and it destroys the culture of Vedic culture. Okay, so here it says, the perfection of one's occupational duty, whether in the sphere of duty to oneself, one's community, or one's nation, is judged by the degree to which the Lord is satisfied. This is a law of nature. It's not simply a statement. It is actually a law of nature. That if we work to please Krishna, then everything else will work out for us. And if we work to please ourselves, such as is encouraged by the modern pundits and the brahmanas to perform karmakanda pujas for people. And they earned a good living by doing that. They drive the brahmanas in America drive around in Mercedes or BMWs. They have gold watches and gold chains. They're fat, and they're basically greedy. They're businessmen. They're not really brahmanas, and they're doing all karmakanda types of pujas. So in Bhagavad-Gita, clearly it says, Yoginam api sarve samad gatanantarat brahma shraddhavam bhajate yomam same yuktatamo matak. And it says, of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united to me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So here Krishna explains what is the greatest yogi. There are 4 points. Number 1, he has great faith in the Lord. Number 2, he always abides. In other words, he always follows Krishna's instructions. Number 3, he renders transcendental loving service to the Lord. And number 4, he's always thinking of the Lord within himself, and because of that, he's always united with the Lord. He doesn't do anything outside of Krishna consciousness. He only acts for the pleasure of Krishna. So, that's the definition of the perfect yogi. And then also, this is further emphasized in the 12th chapter, 2nd verse, Maya Vesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shradaya Parayo Petas Te Me Yukta Tama Mata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, in answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his, meaning Krishna's, personal form and who worships him, meaning Krishna, with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. So when you're washing Krishna's dishes, and you understand that these are the dishes that are used, or the plates or the pots that are used for cooking the food to offer to Krishna, that's a state of samadhi. Anything in relationship to Krishna is non-different than Krishna. So we can make even pots and pans engaged in Krishna's service. Just like Krishna instructed his father to worship a mountain. There's nowhere in the Vedas any information about worshiping Govardhan. That's something that Krishna started himself. Because Govardhan is in relationship to Krishna. He lifted it. He held it up to save the residents of Vrindavana. He touched it. And so therefore, it's non-different than him. Now, devotees understand this. That's why if you go to Vrindavan and a brahmana that lives in Govardhan gives you a Govardhan Shila, you can worship it like the deity of Krishna. It's non-different. You're not allowed to take the rocks, but it has to be given to you by a bona fide brahmana who lives in Govardhan. Then you can worship. If you just take a rock and worship it, it's like an aparad against Govardhan and Krishna. So it's good to know all these things, but you'll know it if you come to class. If you never come to class, you might never know it. But anything in relationship to Krishna is non-different than the Lord. Like, for example, his pure devotee. Pure devotee is worshipped in the same way we worship Krishna. That doesn't mean that the pure devotee is Krishna, but because he's in relationship with Krishna, Krishna appreciates more the worship of his pure devotee than he does worship of himself. So, because he protects his pure devotees, and he's always pleased by their unselfish acts of devotion for him. Okay, so then also, there's another important point where it says, sometimes being worshipped and adored by less intelligent living beings, the demigods become puffed up with power and forget the supremacy of the Lord. This happened when Lord Krishna was present in the universe, and thus the Lord wanted to give a lesson to the king of heaven, Indra. Well, he gave a lesson to Brahma, and he gave a lesson to Indra. And it says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Kamaistai hitagana prapadyante nyo devaha tam tam niyamam astaya pakritya niyatam niyata swayam. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Now, this is a very important verse, and it's the 7th chapter, verse number 20. And the purport, Prabhupada says, those who are freed from all material contaminations surrender unto the Supreme Lord and engage in his devotional service. As long as the material contamination is not completely washed off, they are by nature non-devotees. But even those who have material desires and who resort to the Supreme Lord are not so much attracted by external nature. Because of approaching the right goal, they soon become free from all material lust. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that whether one is a pure devotee and is free from all material desires, or is full of material desires, or desires liberation from material contamination, meaning merging into the Brahman, he should in all cases surrender to Vasudeva. Vasudeva, with the long A, is referring to Krishna. Vasudeva, with a short A, refers to his father, or it can also refer to the universe. So it says, or is full of material desires, or desires liberation from material contamination, he should in all cases surrender to Vasudeva and worship him, meaning Krishna. As stated in the Bhagavatam 2.3.10, Akama Sarvakamova, Moksha Kama Udaridi, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, Yajata Purusham Param. Less intelligent people who have lost their spiritual sense take shelter of demigods for immediate fulfillment of material desires. Generally, such people do not go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are in the lower modes of nature, ignorance and passion, and therefore worship various demigods. Following the rules and regulations of worship, they are satisfied. The worshippers of demigods are motivated by small desires and do not know how to reach the supreme goal. But a devotee of the Supreme Lord is not misguided, because in Vedic literature there are recommendations for worshipping different gods for different purposes. That is, a diseased man is recommended to worship the sun. Those who are not devotees of the Lord think that for certain purposes demigods are better than the Supreme Lord. But a pure devotee knows that the Supreme Lord, Krishna, is the master of all. Now, what's the example of that? Well, you have Ravana. He was worshipping either Brahma or Shiva. He was definitely not worshipping Vishnu or Krishna. Then you have Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. They were not worshipping Krishna. They were worshipping Brahma. And then you also have people like Sisupala and other demons. They were not worshipping Krishna. They were insulting Krishna. They hated Krishna, right? But they were worshipping demigods. So we see that these are low-class people that have a little spiritual inclination, but they don't go to Krishna. So today, most of the Hindus are worshipping demigods because they want material benefits, and they have a rumor that if you go to Krishna, he'll take everything away from you. So don't do that. Go to Ganapati, or go to this one, or Durga Mata, or Shiva, Lord Shiva. They'll give you what you want, you see. So this, but look what happened. Like Shiva was, Banasura was worshiping Shiva all the time, and he became very powerful. He had 1,000 arms, but when he went to war against Krishna and the Yadus, Krishna cut off almost all of his arms, and he only had 4 arms left. He lost all his powers. And Lord Shiva was on the side of Banasura, but Krishna used his yawning sleep weapon, and Lord Shiva got very tired, and he went and took rest. He left the battlefield. So you see, Krishna has all kinds of different weapons. So he used the yawning weapon on Lord Shiva. But Banasura cut off all his arms almost, right? And he was more or less invincible when he had 1,000 arms. But then he could shoot 500 arrows at once. But now he had only 4 arms. Okay, so it says here that the Vedas recommend worship of the demigods for different material benefits. So in India you have this rumor. It says, don't worship Krishna, worship the demigods. And they also say, don't keep Bhagavad-Gita in your house. You'll end up fighting with your relatives. Have you heard this, Prabhu? What?
No.
You never heard that? Prabhu, did you ever hear this? Have you ever heard, don't keep Bhagavad-Gita in your house, otherwise you'll end up arguing?
I didn't hear.
Huh?
I didn't hear this.
You didn't hear that? Okay. Well, it's news for you. It is definitely recommended by some people in India. Don't keep Bhagavad-Gita in your house, otherwise you'll end up fighting with your relatives. Yeah. And then also, don't go to Krishna, go to the Devas, because they'll give you what you want. So these rumors are very prevalent in India. Okay, so then it says, but a pure devotee knows that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the master of all. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 5, 142, it is said, Ekale Ishwara Krishna Ara Sabhabritya. Only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is master, and all others are servants. Therefore, a pure devotee never goes to demigods for satisfaction of his material needs. He depends on the Supreme Lord, and the pure devotee is satisfied by whatever he gives. So why would we go to Krishna with material desires? Well, because if you go to Krishna, you have a very good chance. That means that you're also going to associate with devotees. You have a very good chance of giving up your material desires gradually and being fully dedicated to the Lord. But if you go to the demigods, and especially in the company of materialistic brahmanas, you'll never give it up because they're making money out of it. So at the end of Dwapara Yuga, it was enjoined, or it was dictated, that no animal slaughter pujas should be performed, because previously brahmanas could perform pujas with animal slaughter, killing cows and horses, and even human beings. There was also human slaughter, not slaughter, but pujas, in which a human being would be put into the fire. Now, why was this happening? Now, you might be like shocked. So, what? Well, because the brahmanas had the power to bring back and rejuvenate the person or the cow or the horse and give life to it. So you're not allowed to kill unless you can bring back the sacrificed animal or person to life again. So Vishwamrita Muni did that with the son of Harishchandra. Harishchandra's son was destined to die, so he went and purchased a son from a poor brahmana, and instead of sacrificing his son, he sacrificed that little boy. And his guru was Vasistha Muni. Well, Vishwamrita Muni had a quarrel with Vasistha Muni. So he talked to that boy and taught him a mantra to say when he was going to be put into the fire. And when the boy was put into the fire by Harishchandra and his brahmanas, the boy said the mantra that was given to him by his guru, Vishwamrita Muni, and he didn't burn. He sat in the fire. The flames were all over the place. Even his dhoti did not burn. So there's an example of even children being put into the fire. But he was saved. Now, after he was saved by the mantra that he received, there was a dilemma, because who did the boy belong to? His father, who sold him, or Harishchandra, who bought him, or Vishwamrita Muni, who saved him. So it was decided that Vishwamrita Muni was the actual father of the boy, because he saved his life. So here we see a dilemma when you put a child into a fire and it doesn't burn, he doesn't die. Who does he belong to? Well, he belongs to the person who saved his life. The father sold him. Harishchandra put the boy into the fire, but Vishwamrita Muni saved him. Yeah. So, therefore, we should be completely indebted to Srila Prabhupada, because he's saving all of us by giving us real knowledge. But do we have faith in it? Do we have enough faith to say, I'm not going to be in IT or AI anymore. I'm going to become a farmer and protect cows and become a good steward of land. Well, most people will not do that, even though they're devotees. But look what happened in Ukraine. There are actually like 2,000 devotees at least in Ukraine, initiated devotees. When this war started, most of them either ran away to other countries, or they took refuge on the 6 farms that ISKCON owns in Ukraine. Now, bombs don't usually fall on the farms. unless the farms have, military installations right near them. But the remote farms, no bombs fall there because there's no military target. So many devotees took refuge in the farms that they have. So what would happen if there was if Russia throws, like as it's promising to do or is threatening to do, 4 hypersonic nuclear bombs on the United States? What would happen? There would be absolute panic in this country, and everyone would try and get out as fast as they can from the big cities, because the only people that can survive in a war situation, a severe war situation, are farmers, right? So therefore, we have 3 farms now. I want to get more farms. I want to have a contingency plan for our community in case there is a major war, and it could very easily happen now. So if we take the example of what's happening in Ukraine to the devotees, they are safe, there's food, and there's shelter, and there's deity worship, everything on those farms. And they are really thankful of it. In fact, there's one video of a woman who lost everything, a devotee woman, and she had to run away from her house because the war was so bad. And she took refuge in one of the farms, and there's a video of her on the internet. You can see it. And she's crying and just thanking the devotees that they saved her life, that she had a place to go to. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Any questions? You see how Krishna, he desired to utilize the opulent finances or financial strength of Maharaj Nanda for worship of the cows, and also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. And thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Haribol. No questions? Yes. Go ahead, you first, and then you, sir.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol.
My question is, why does Russia want to invade Ukraine?
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with the lecture today, but Putin, the ruler of Russia, has claimed that the Ukrainians and the Russians are the same people. But some of the Ukrainians are Nazis, and they were. In World War II, a whole bunch of Ukrainian people sided with the Nazis. And there's still that tendency there. And therefore he says he's liberating, because there are a lot of Russians that live in Ukraine. So he's liberating his people, the Russians, from the influence of the Nazis. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't want to discuss that. It might be true, it might not be true. But that's one excuse that he gave for the war. The second excuse is that he doesn't want Ukraine to become a member of NATO, the military union of European countries, on his border. Ukraine has a big border with Russia, and he wants to have a buffer. So Ukraine is a buffer between Western Europe and Russia. And if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, then it would then the Americans would put their nuclear weapons in Ukraine, and it would, for him, it would be a violation of agreements that were made after World War II, in which Europe and the United States gave to Stalin the right to have control over Eastern European nations, and the United States would have control of Western European nations. Well, that changed when, well, the Soviet Union collapsed, and now many of those Eastern European nations have joined NATO. So that, according to Putin, is a violation of the agreements that were made. So whether that's true or not, that's another debatable issue. Anyway, those are two major reasons why he has invaded Ukraine. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I think you beautifully explained why a massive industrialization can lead us to disaster.
Massive what?
Industrialization.
Yes. That's what Prabhupada says.
Right. So the question that comes to my mind is but we still need some bit of industries to provide employment, to provide for things, or whatever, right?
You would have more employment if people went back to farms.
I see.
The industrialization has eliminated many employments of people. One tractor can eliminate 100 people. Right? That industrialization has caused a lot of problems. So then the people that go from the farm to the city and end up working in factories and in big companies. But the lifestyle is very bad in the cities, and you lose the Vedic culture when people live in cities, big cities, and work in industries. Look at India. You have these gigantic factories in Faridabad, right, which is very close to Vrindavana, and then the Indian government put a gigantic military base in Mathura. All that is contaminating the Yamuna River, and it's completely, breaking the preoccupation with worship of Lord Krishna. With worship, their worship now is the factory, and the whole factory, culture. So it's a big tragedy.
And also related to that,
Don't forget, India was a very rich country.
Right.
Right? That's why the Europeans were trying to go there, and the Mughals and the Muslims were trying to go there and rape it, take its wealth away. And the British also. The British stole so many things from India. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just curious. You also mentioned about that India took to the path of industrialization also.
That was not what Gandhi wanted.
Oh,
But
okay.
Nehru wanted. Nehru was Britisher in culture. See? And as soon as Gandhi died, he industrialized the country like anything. And Gandhi wanted to go in the opposite direction, put the people out of the big cities back into the countryside and back on their farms, and use the chakra, what do you call it? The
Charkha.
What was it?
The charkha.
Yeah.
To spin the
Spin their own cloth, and
yeah.
you wanted to go back to that culture. And Nehru was complete opposite.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And by the way, families always stayed together when they were living on the farms. You would have 3, 4, sometimes 5 generations of the family alive, or everybody working together. And that's the way you create real prosperity, right? When you have a large family and everyone's loyal to the father and mother, or the grandfather and grandmother, and they all cooperate, and everyone is happy. Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If India was a poor country, no one would have gone there. The Europeans would not have gone there. The Mughals would not have gone there. India was a very rich country, right? And they all went there to steal, the riches. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. It got so dangerous in India that they had to hide the riches, just like the Padmanabha temple. Some years ago, they discovered that there was a huge trough of gold that was hidden in that temple. Right. We're talking about trillions of dollars of gold that was hidden in that temple. Right. Go ahead.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma.
Bandho Muri Savadana Mate.
Bandho Muri Savadana Mate. Prasade Bhavatoriya Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jai Te.
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Goriya Akya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Akya.
Arana Koriyo Mane Asha.
Arana Koriya Mane Asa.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Yotama Gati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha.
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिया जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो.
शांति प्रकाशितो.
प्रेम भक्ति जाओ ते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
वेद गाय जहरा चरितो.
वेद गाय जनर चरितो.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनाना बंधु.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनाना बंधु.
लोकेना लोकेरा जीवाना.
लोकेरा जीवाना.
हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया.
हा प्रभु कोरा दया दया मोरे पद छाया.
एबे जास गौशिक त्रिभुवाना.
एबे गाय जनन दुराना.
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना.
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना.
जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Nitya Gaura Haribo 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 Nitya Gaura Haribo
Nitya Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitya Gaura Haribo. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikachasta Tarasatarashi Shishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Oh, by the way, when you lead the kirtan, you have to wait until the arti is finished. Yeah, and now it lasts longer because it's almost summertime. They use the peacock feather also, so it lasts longer. Okay. Gaura Premanandi.